Have you ever been around someone and just felt something was off? Like their words were polite, their face was smiling, but deep down, you knew something didn't sit right. You couldn't put your finger on it, but the warmth wasn't there. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? And the older we get, the more we learn to trust that feeling. That quiet whisper inside that says, "This person doesn't truly like me." You might have grown up believing that as long as you're kind, respectful, and supportive, people will naturally return the favor. But life teaches us something different. Not everyone who shakes your hand is your friend. Not everyone who says, "You look great today," really means it. Some people dislike you, but they won't say it outright. Instead, they hide it behind smiles, empty flattery, and subtle jabs that chip away at your self-worth over time. That's why we need to talk about this today. Because after 60, your time and energy become even more precious. You've lived long enough to know what matters, and surrounding yourself with honest, respectful people should be at the top of that list. There's no room left for fake friendships or silent disrespect. Let's begin by looking at the first and probably the most common sign. People who joke about your flaws. On the surface, it seems harmless. They laugh. You laugh. They say something like, "Oh, I'm just kidding." But deep inside, that joke doesn't feel like a joke. It feels like a cut. I remember someone who used to comment on everything. My posture, my outfits, even the way I pronounced certain words. Always in a teasing tone, always with a smirk. I'd laugh along because I didn't want to seem uptight. I told myself, "They're just joking. Don't be so sensitive." But with time, the jokes kept coming. And strangely enough, they were never about the good things. Only the weak spots. And that's when it hit me. These weren't jokes. They were hidden criticisms. And by laughing along, I was silently agreeing that I deserved to be laughed at. People like this aren't just being funny. They're testing how much you'll tolerate. It's a form of quiet manipulation. They take tiny swings at your confidence, and if you don't stop them, they swing a little harder next time. It's like a bully in disguise, except they wear a smile and expect you to join in the act. So what do you do when this happens? You stop playing along. You look them in the eye and say, "I don't find that funny." You change the tone of the conversation. And most importantly, you stop doubting yourself. A good friend doesn't build themselves up by tearing you down. That brings me to the next sign, the compliment that leaves a bruise. Have you ever received a compliment that didn't quite feel like one? Maybe someone said, "You look great for your age," or "You handled that better than I expected from you." It sounds positive, but underneath there's a sting, a whisper that says, "You're not quite good enough." These are what we call backhanded compliments, and they're designed to confuse you. Because if you get upset, they'll say, "What? I just gave you a compliment." But deep down, you know what they're really doing. They're keeping you in your place, making sure you don't feel too proud or too confident. And why would someone do that? Often it's because they feel threatened by you. Your wisdom, your strength, your calm presence, it rattles something in them. So instead of lifting you up, they dress up their insecurity as a nice comment and serve it to you with a smile. Here's what I do now when that happens. I pause, smile back, and say, "Interesting. What exactly did you mean by that?" I don't say it to pick a fight. I say it to put the mirror back in their hands, to let them hear their own words again. You'd be surprised how many people shrink back when they're forced to explain the insult they tried to hide. Because at this stage in life, we're not here to decode people's passive-aggressive language. We're here to enjoy peace. And peace doesn't include tolerating people who pretend to like you while secretly trying to knock you down. Now let's talk about something a little more subtle, but just as telling, being left out. You ever found out your friends had a get-together and somehow you didn't get the message? You see the photos afterward. You hear the stories, And they all say, "Oh, we thought you were busy." Or, "It was a last-minute thing." But it wasn't, was it? You weren't invited, and you feel it in your gut. Being excluded hurts, no matter how old we get. But what hurts more is when people act like it was an accident. Like you're imagining things. That's a game too many people play. They don't want the discomfort of telling you the truth, so they quietly push you out and hope you won't notice. But we do notice. We always notice. Here's the hard truth. If people want you around, they make sure you know it. And if they keep forgetting, it's not forgetfulness. It's avoidance. And that hurts. But it's also a sign, one we need to pay attention to. Because when someone repeatedly leaves you out, they're showing you where you stand in their life. It's not personal. It's just honest. And with that honesty comes freedom. The freedom to stop chasing, to stop waiting for invitations that won't come, and to start investing your energy in people who actually want your company. I used to think confronting someone about this would make me look desperate or dramatic. But I've learned that asking, "Hey, I saw you all got together. Why didn't I hear about it?" doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. And it clears the air, one way or another. Either they explain with sincerity, or they squirm. And either way, you get the clarity you deserve. When we stop tiptoeing around other people's comfort, we start reclaiming our own power. And that's what this is really about. Not reading signs so we can attack others, but so we can protect ourselves. So we can make space for real connection and let go of the performances, the guessing games, and the people who pretend. Let's keep going. There are more signs to uncover, and each one brings us closer to a life of truth, self-respect, and genuine peace. Sometimes the most painful thing isn't what people say, it's what they don't do. And one of the clearest signs that someone doesn't truly value you is when they're suddenly too busy, but only when it comes to you. We've all heard it. "I've just got so much going on," they say. Let's catch up soon. But soon never comes. Weeks go by, then months. And all the while, you see them making time for others, meeting up with mutual friends, posting cheerful photos from dinner parties and weekends away. They have the time, just not for you. That realization stings, doesn't it? I once had a friend who I thought was like family. We used to talk all the time. But one day, it just started to fade. Every time I reached out, I got the same polite excuses. "This week is crazy. Work's intense. I'll get back to you." And yet, I'd hear from others about where they'd been, and with whom. I tried to justify it. I told myself, they're just overwhelmed. They'll come around. But they didn't. And that's when it clicked. It wasn't about time. It was about priorities. Here's something I've come to believe deeply. People make time for what and who they care about. It's not about schedules. It's about effort. And when someone's too busy for you again and again, they're sending a message. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. And the message is, you are no longer a priority. Now that doesn't mean you lash out or become bitter. It simply means you stop chasing. You stop begging for scraps of attention and start recognizing your own value. Your time, especially at this stage in life, is sacred. Give it to those who treat it, and you, with respect. Another quiet but powerful sign that someone doesn't like you, even if they won't say it, is how they respond to physical closeness. And I don't mean anything romantic. I mean simple human connection. A handshake, a hug, a pat on the back, just being near you without discomfort. You see, when someone consistently avoids physical contact only with you, when they stiffen up when you reach out, or subtly move away when you sit too close, they're telling you something. It may not be loud, but it's clear. There was someone in my life once who would light up around others. Hugs, laughter, arms around shoulders. But with me, it was different. Every interaction was cold, distant. I'd reach out for a friendly touch and watch them flinch. At first, I thought maybe they were just not the touchy type. But no, they just weren't that way with me. And it hurt, not because I needed physical affection, but because it made me realize that I was being held at arm's length in more ways than one. Instead of obsessing over why they pulled back, I started asking myself a different question. What is this distance teaching me? Because the truth is, physical avoidance often reflects emotional avoidance. A lack of trust. A lack of warmth. A desire to disconnect without confrontation. And while it's painful, it's also useful. It tells you where you stand. Don't ignore the signs just because they're quiet. Our bodies speak when our words stay silent. If someone constantly recoils, turns away, or freezes at your touch, even just a handshake, they are communicating discomfort, if not dislike. And you deserve relationships where your presence doesn't make someone shrink, but soften. Now let's talk about something that reveals a person's character more clearly than anything else. What they do when you need them. Because it's easy to be a friend when life is good, when everything is light and simple. But real friendship shows up in the hard times, in the dark moments. When you're struggling and don't know who to turn to. Have you ever been there? Facing a personal crisis? Maybe it was grief, illness, heartbreak, and you thought, they'll be there for me. You weren't asking for much. Just a phone call, a check-in, a moment of compassion. But instead, you got silence. They disappeared. It's a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone, to be in pain, and then realize that the people you supported during their storms are nowhere to be found during yours. I went through this during a rough patch not long ago. I remember scrolling through my phone, trying to figure out who to reach out to. I texted a few people I thought would understand. I waited. But the replies didn't come. Or if they did, they were vague, dismissive. Hang in there. Sorry to hear that. And then, nothing. It's in moments like that when you learn who's really in your corner. Not just for the laughs and celebrations, but for the days when everything feels heavy. People who vanish when you're vulnerable are not just busy, they're absent by choice. They don't want the burden of your pain. And as cruel as it sounds, they don't value your struggle enough to stay close. But here's the beauty in that realization. It clears the room. It filters out the noise. And it makes space for the right people, the ones who don't flinch when life gets messy, the ones who listen, show up, and walk with you when the road is rough. And if you've ever been the one who disappeared, maybe because you didn't know what to say or how to help, that's okay too. What matters is what you learn from it. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Support is not measured in grand gestures. It's found in presence, in quiet loyalty, in the words, "I'm here," followed by actions that prove it. If someone consistently withdraws when you're in need, you owe it to yourself to step back and ask, is this a relationship worth nurturing? Not the harmless kind, the kind that chips away at your trust bit by bit behind closed doors. You've probably heard the saying, if they gossip to you, they'll gossip about you. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. But what really stings is when someone you trusted, someone you thought was in your corner, starts speaking about you in ways that feel cold, exaggerated, or just plain untrue. It happened to me once with a person I had confided in during a very personal chapter of my life. I shared something vulnerable, something I thought would be safe with them. A few days later, I started hearing bits of my own story retold by others. But the version they heard was twisted, colored with judgment, missing the truth. That moment felt like betrayal. Not because of what was said, but because of who said it. When someone gossips about you, especially someone you've been kind to, it's more than just drama. It's disrespect. It's a way for them to control the narrative, to shape how others see you, without giving you a chance to speak for yourself. And why would someone do that? Often it's because your presence threatens them in some way. Maybe they envy how others respond to you. Maybe your quiet strength reminds them of something they lack. So they choose the coward's route. Whisper behind your back instead of speaking to your face. You can't control what others say about you, but you can control whether or not you absorb it. And that's the power you hold. You can't stop gossip from happening, but you can stop giving people the benefit of the doubt when they've proven they don't deserve it. You can choose not to chase clarification, not to beg for them to correct the record. Because sometimes the act of rising above, of walking away from the noise, is the most dignified thing you can do. It took me a while to realize this. Not everyone who laughs with you is loyal to you. Some people stay close just long enough to collect stories, not to build connection, but to stockpile ammunition. But here's what they forget. When you speak poorly about someone behind their back, you don't reveal their character. You reveal your own. That's why I now treat gossip like secondhand smoke. I don't breathe it in. I don't linger near it. I move away. And if I find out someone's been spreading my name through the mud, I don't rage. I don't plot revenge. I simply remember and redirect my time elsewhere. Because at this point in life, I no longer ask, do they like me? I ask, do I feel respected, valued, and at peace when I'm around them? And if the answer is no, then I've already received all the clarity I need. Now I want to leave you with something important to remember. Our peace isn't stolen. It's surrendered. People can insult you, ignore you, exclude you, or gossip about you. But none of that becomes yours unless you let it in. You get to decide what words you absorb, what behaviors you accept, what relationships you invest in. This isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone around you. It's about becoming clear. Clear on who truly shows up and who just performs. Clear on who leaves you feeling seen and who quietly tears you down. Because after 60, 70, 80 years of life, your inner circle should feel like home. Not a place where you tiptoe or second-guess yourself, but a space where your soul can breathe. Where you are met with truth, warmth, and mutual respect, not fake smiles and hidden knives. If someone constantly makes jokes at your expense, gives compliments that feel like digs, forgets to include you, avoids your presence, disappears when you're hurting, or spreads gossip when your back is turned, believe them. That's not friendship. That's not care. That's not love. And yes, sometimes it's hard to let go, especially when you've known someone for years. You remember the good times, the laughs, the shared history. But don't confuse history with harmony. Don't confuse loyalty to your past with a sacrifice of your peace in the present. There's great strength in recognizing when something or someone no longer fits where you're going. And even greater strength in saying, I choose myself. I choose my dignity. I choose calm over chaos. Your life, especially now, should be filled with ease, not with doubt, not with tension, not with people who smile with their mouths and cut with their words. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining things. You are simply growing more aware, more attuned, more selective. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. And if all of this has stirred something in you, if you recognize these signs in someone close to you, take a breath. You don't need to confront them with anger. You don't need to write long letters or have dramatic showdowns. Sometimes all it takes is a quiet shift, a little distance, a redirection of your time and energy toward those who truly value you. Let people show you who they are, and when they do, believe them. Then choose peace. So, now that we've looked these signs in the eye, the subtle jokes, the backhanded compliments, the silent exclusions, the emotional absence, the vanishing support, the distance, and the quiet betrayals, I want you to ask yourself something. Who have I been keeping in my life out of habit, not harmony? Because sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that the people you've given your best to aren't willing to do the same in return. But the truth is, that realization is not a loss. It's a gift, a clean break, a second chance to rebuild your inner circle. Smaller, maybe, but stronger, wiser, softer in spirit, but firmer in standards. It's not easy to look back and see where you've been disrespected, dismissed, or disregarded. But it's even harder to stay in those patterns once you know better. And that's where your real power lies, not in changing others, but in changing what you allow. There's a message that still echoes through time. You do not control what others do, but you always control how you respond. And your response at this stage in your life doesn't have to be rage or retreat. It can be peace. It can be quiet resolve. It can be a calm exit from relationships that no longer honor who you are. Let them call you distant. Let them say you've changed. Let them whisper that you've become difficult. Because standing up for your dignity might make you unpopular with people who benefited from your silence. And that's okay. You weren't put here to be everyone's favorite. You were put here to live truthfully. To be kind, yes. But also to be clear. You've earned your peace. You've carried others long enough. And if there are people who still don't see your worth, let them go. Not with bitterness, but with understanding. Some people simply can't meet you at the level you've grown into. That's not your burden to fix. That's their path to walk. Here's what I hope you take with you today. You are not a backup plan. Not a second choice. Not a convenience. You are a human being with depth, wisdom, and years of experience that deserve to be honored. If someone cannot see that, you don't need to prove anything. You simply need to stop shrinking to fit into their narrow view of you. Choose friends who check in, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Choose company that doesn't gossip when you leave the room, but defends you when you're not there. Choose people who laugh with you, not at you. People who give compliments with sincerity, not with poison wrapped in praise. And most of all, choose yourself. Choose the version of you who no longer questions their worth because of someone else's smallness. Choose the version of you who is proud, gentle, and no longer willing to carry relationships that feel like emotional weight. Your life right now is your own. You don't need everyone to like you. You just need to like yourself enough to walk away from anything that makes you doubt your light. So go on, stand tall, speak calmly, set boundaries with grace. And when someone tries to dim your shine, remember, you don't owe them a reaction. You owe yourself peace. If any of this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Share your story. Share your strength. Let others know they're not alone. And if you found this helpful, give the video a like. It helps more than you know. And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos made just for you. Until next time, take care of your time, your heart, and your peace. You've earned every moment of it. Here's to living with clarity, courage, and calm at any age.